Soldier finds giant python attacking pregnant K9 German Shepherd. You won't believe the dog's reaction. In the dense Florida Everglades, where the air hangs heavy with heat and danger lurks in every shadow, Army Specialist Daniel Hayes thought he'd seen it all. But nothing could have prepared him for the sight that froze him in his tracks that sweltering afternoon. There, in a patch of crushed reeds, a massive Burmese python, longer than a pickup truck, was coiled tightly around a pregnant K9 German Shepherd, her paws flailing weakly, her deep brown eyes wide with terror. This wasn't just any dog. She was a decorated military K9 named Sasha, trained for search and rescue missions and explosives detection, now fighting not just for her own life, but for the unborn pups she carried. What happened next would shake Daniel to his core and leave every witness questioning the limits of loyalty, courage, and the unbreakable bond between soldiers and their K9 partners. Because in that moment, as the python's muscular coils tightened and Sasha's breathing grew ragged, the swamp erupted in a sound Daniel would never forget. The furious barking and charging paws of other K9s who refused to let their own fall. Before we dive into this unbelievable rescue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the most powerful and inspiring stories of courage and survival. What you're about to hear will change the way you see bravery. Forever. The sun was merciless that day. It scorched the Florida Everglades with heat so intense it shimmered off every surface, making the world look like it was melting. Army Specialist Daniel Hayes wiped sweat from his forehead as he maneuvered his ATV along a narrow dirt path surrounded by tall sawgrass and gnarled cypress trees. He was used to tough terrain. Afghanistan had given him plenty of that. But this was different. The Everglades felt alive in a way that unsettled him. It breathed, hissed, and growled. He was on a mission to deliver supplies to an isolated ranger post being used temporarily by a National Guard unit helping with wildlife control. It was supposed to be routine, just a quiet ride out, a drop-off, and back. But fate had other plans. As Daniel neared a fork in the trail, he heard it. At first, it was faint, a low, drawn-out yelp, almost a cry. He stopped the ATV and listened again. There was clearer this time, a sound of pain, desperation. He cut the engine and stood still, ears straining. Help! The sound was animal, not human. Sharp, panicked. Daniel dropped his pack, unholstered his sidearm, and moved cautiously toward the noise. His boots crunched on dead branches and moss-covered roots as he pushed through thick underbrush. And then he saw it, a clearing open before him. And what he saw didn't make sense. At first, it looked like a twisted log, dark, thick, unmoving. But then it shifted. The log was alive. A massive Burmese python, easily 18 to 20 feet long, was coiled around something that struggled violently. A dog. No, not just any dog. A German Shepherd, her coat dusty and bloodied, her legs thrashing weakly against the crushing force wrapped around her chest and belly. Her mouth was open in a silent scream, her eyes glassy with fear. And then Daniel saw it, the bloated curve of her belly. She was pregnant. Jesus Christ, he muttered, taking a step forward. The snake had her locked in a deadly grip. Her hind legs kicked sporadically, trying to push against the python's coils. Her tongue lolled from her mouth, and Daniel could see her sides twitching as she tried to breathe. He raised his gun and froze. This wasn't a normal stray. He saw the military patch on her harness, half shredded but still legible. K9, Sasha. His stomach dropped. He remembered her now. She'd served alongside his own unit briefly during disaster relief training in Louisiana. She was famous for detecting trapped survivors after hurricanes. Sasha had been more than just a working dog. She was a hero, and now she was dying. He couldn't shoot, not from this angle. The python was coiled so tightly around her that a bullet might hit Sasha herself. His mind raced. He needed help. He turned and ran back to the ATV, yanking the radio from his backpack. "This is Specialist Hayes," he shouted, out of breath. "Coordinates 23.912, northeast swamp sector. We got a military K9 being constricted by a python. Immediate assistance needed. Repeat, immediate assistance needed." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Specialist. Help is on the way." He dropped the radio and grabbed a machete from the side of the ATV. Back at the clearing, Sasha was weakening. Her movements were slower, her breathing shallow. He approached fast and low, machete raised. But before he could strike, the python whipped his head toward him, its tongue flicking out, sensing danger. Daniel froze again. The snake hissed, low and threatening, its head the size of a football, its muscles rippling. One wrong move, and it would crush Sasha in seconds. Then something strange happened. A bark, sharp and urgent, ripped through the swamp on the left. Then another. Out of the underbrush exploded a black K9 German Shepherd, jaws bared, leaping straight toward the snake. Behind him, 3 more, military K9s. They descended like a pack of trained wolves, flanking the python, distracting it, snapping at its tail and head, barking and circling. And in that moment of chaos, Daniel acted. He lunged forward and swung the machete with all his strength. Chop! It landed just behind the python's head. Not deep enough. The beast recoiled, thrashing violently, and Daniel fell backward, narrowly avoiding Sasha's limp body being thrown at him. Blood sprayed. The dogs barked louder, coordinating. The python uncoiled slightly. Enough. Daniel dropped the machete, grabbed Sasha by the harness, and dragged her out of the coil's reach. Her body was limp, her eyes barely open. "Stay with me, girl. Stay with me," he panted. One of the K9s, a tan male with scars across his muzzle, placed himself between Sasha and the wounded snake, snarling, protecting her. Daniel didn't understand where they had come from. Then he saw it. 2 more handlers running into the clearing from the trail, rifles raised. "Stand back!" one yelled. 2 shots rang out. The python slumped, its body still twitching. But it was done. Silence fell over the swamp. Daniel knelt beside Sasha, feeling for breath. She was still alive, but barely. The handlers dropped to their knees, inspecting her. One of them, a medic, started immediate trauma response. "We got crushed ribs, low pulse," he said. "She's pregnant too?" Daniel nodded. "She's a hero," he said softly. "She saved lives. We're not letting her go down like this." As the medics worked, the other K9s surrounded Sasha protectively. One gently licked her ear. Another lay beside her, close but not touching, offering silent support. Daniel looked around the swamp, at the blood, the machete, the broken branches, the circle of dogs around their wounded comrade. He had never seen anything like it. This wasn't just survival. It was brotherhood, loyalty. And whatever came next, he knew one thing. They had saved Sasha's life. Because if anyone deserved a second chance, it was her. The air inside the makeshift veterinary tent was thick with tension. Every second felt like a countdown. Sasha lay on the metal operating table, her body limp, ribs visibly bruised and discolored, sides rising and falling at a dangerously slow rhythm. Her breathing was shallow, labored. Her unborn pups. No one could tell if they were still alive. Army Specialist Daniel Hayes paced outside, covered in swamp muck and sweat, his heart pounding harder than it had during any mission overseas. Just an hour ago, he had never expected to see Sasha again, much less like this, bruised, barely clinging to life, after being crushed by a python the size of a telephone pole. Inside, Army K9 Medic Sergeant Lena Rodriguez moved quickly, her latex gloves already stained with Sasha's blood. She had done emergency field work before, but nothing like this. There were bruised organs, swelling in the belly, signs of fetal distress. Sasha's eyes fluttered but didn't focus. "Her vitals are crashing," Lena muttered to the assistant next to her. "BP's dropping. Give me the fluids now." Another handler, Corporal Jake Miller, stood near the back wall, cradling one of the backup oxygen masks designed for K9s. "Is she going to make it?" he asked, voice hoarse. Lena didn't answer. Not because she didn't want to, because she didn't know. Back outside the tent, Daniel crouched beside the other K9s that had helped save Sasha. One of them, Remo, a lean, battle-scarred shepherd with graying fur around the muzzle, kept whining low and steady, eyes fixed on the tent. Daniel ran a hand down Remo's back. "I know, buddy. I'm scared too." The moment played in his head on repeat. The coils, The eyes. Sasha gasping for air. The pack of dogs responding like a trained SWAT team. And her limp body as he dragged her out. How was it possible that dogs, creatures who couldn't speak, could show so much more unity, more courage than many men he'd served with? He didn't know how they had known Sasha was in danger or where they had come from, but they had saved her. And now he owed her everything. A moment later, Lena stepped out of the tent, pulling off her gloves and rubbing her temple. Everyone stood. "She's still with us," she said, "but just barely. Internal swelling is bad. She's in shock. We stabilized her breathing, but if we don't get her to a proper surgical facility in the next couple of hours, she won't make it. Neither will the pups." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Then we move her. Now." Lena hesitated. She might not survive the transport, but staying here means certain death. "So yeah, we move." The closest advanced K-9 trauma center was in Naples, almost 80 miles away. The road to the Everglades was narrow, partly flooded in sections and not made for speed. Daniel took command without asking. "I'll drive." They loaded Sasha into the back of a military-grade pickup, fitted with a cushioned bed and climate control unit. 2 K-9s, Remo and a younger female named Lux, jumped in after her, refusing to leave her side. The sun was starting to dip when the engine roared to life. Daniel gripped the wheel like his hands were welded to it, his jaw clenched. Lena sat beside him, monitoring Sasha's stats with a portable unit. "Still breathing." "Barely," she muttered. The road was brutal, potholed, narrow, winding between thick stand of trees. But Daniel didn't slow down. Not for anything. They hit a stretch of flooded pavement. "You sure about this?" Lena asked. He slammed into it, water crashing over the hood. Sasha let out a low, pitiful groan from the back. "Hang in there, girl," Daniel whispered, white-knuckling the wheel. In the back seat, Lux gently licked Sasha's ear while Remo pressed against her, keeping her warm. They were halfway to Naples when the flat happened. The truck lurched, tilting sideways. Daniel cursed and pulled over fast. "Rear tire," shredded. "No, no, no," Lena growled, checking Sasha's pulse again. "We don't have time for this." Daniel leapt out, grabbing the jack and spare tire. "I'll change it in 2 minutes. Just keep her stable." But nothing in the Everglades was easy. As he jacked up the truck, clouds began to gather. Thunder cracked. And then sirens. A Florida Highway Patrol SUV appeared in the distance, followed by a civilian SUV with the blue lights of an off-duty vet named Dr. Sam Elwood, an old friend of Lena's, contacted via satellite emergency call. "You brought help?" Daniel asked, soaked to the bone but relieved. Dr. Elwood nodded. "I came as fast as I could. I've got surgical equipment in the back." They didn't wait. In the rain, under dim headlights, a mobile surgery began right there on the side of the flooded road. Remo barked at anyone who got too close. Lux sat still, guarding Sasha's head like a sentinel. Inside the open SUV, Dr. Elwood worked while Lena assisted, navigating Sasha's crushed ribs and damaged tissue. The storm raged around them, rain lashing the roadside. Daniel held an umbrella with one hand and a flashlight with the other, doing his best not to shake. At one point, Sasha stopped breathing. "No, no, don't you dare." Lena snapped, grabbing the K-9 resuscitator and pumping it hard. Silence. Then a wheeze. A blink. "She's still with us." Cheers erupted, quiet but real. 1 hour later, Dr. Elwood stitched the final wound. "We did everything we could. She's stable for now." Daniel's knees finally gave out. He dropped onto the wet pavement and buried his face in his hands. The storm passed. The road dried. And in the back of the SUV, Sasha slept weak, stitched, bruised, but alive. As the team prepared to transport her the rest of the way to Naples, Lena looked at Daniel. "You saved her life." He shook his head. "We saved her life. Her team did. Her brothers and sisters." He looked at Remo and Lux, curled up beside Sasha, unwilling to sleep until she did. He had seen courage in war. But this was something else. This was love. This was loyalty. And whatever Sasha had survived, this was only the beginning. Naples Veterinary Emergency Center was already waiting when the military truck pulled into the gated lot just past midnight. The facility glowed with cold fluorescent light, stark against the night. Despite the late hour, a full team of emergency surgeons, anesthesiologists, and veterinary technicians was on standby. They had read the incoming reports. A crushed, pregnant K9 German Shepherd who had survived a python attack in the Everglades. No one believed she would still be alive on arrival, but she was. Barely. Daniel jumped out of the truck before it even came to a full stop, opening the back carefully as Remo and Lux stirred protectively. Sasha lay curled on a stretcher made of military canvas and foam padding. Her breathing was shallow. The stitched areas from her roadside surgery had begun to swell. She didn't lift her head. "She's alive," Daniel said, breathless. "Please, just help her." The vet team didn't waste a second. She was lifted onto a mobile gurney while Daniel followed beside her, not caring that he was still soaked, muddy, and shaking from the adrenaline that hadn't left his system since that swamp. One of the doctors, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and calm eyes, turned to him as they pushed Sasha down the hall. "What's her name?" "Sasha," he whispered. "Let's get Sasha home." Inside the surgical prep room, the team took over. Daniel watched through a window as they began the second emergency operation, this time with full equipment. He watched them shave her belly, restart anesthesia, and open the surgical site with extreme care. Her pups were in danger. One had already stopped moving. The others had weak vitals. "They'll do everything," Lena said behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I know," he murmured. "But what if it's not enough?" He didn't want to say it, but it hung between them. She was crushed, ribs broken, internal bleeding. Her body had endured what no living thing should, and she was carrying life inside her, and she was still trying. That thought alone broke him. He sank onto the bench outside the surgical wing and dropped his head into his hands. Remo and Lux sat on either side of him, silent and watchful. They didn't bark. They didn't move. It was like they understood what was happening on the other side of that wall. 3 hours passed. The surgery lights went dark. Daniel stood immediately as the doors pushed open and the silver-haired surgeon stepped out. She looked exhausted, her mask still dangling around her neck. "How is she?" he asked. His voice caught in his throat. "She made it," the doctor said gently. "She lost a lot of blood. She has a fractured rib that punctured muscle near her lungs. We repaired it. One of the pups didn't survive the trauma." Daniel's eyes closed. "But the others?" he asked. 3 still alive. 2 are stable. 1 is weak, but showing signs of recovery. If Sasha survives the next 48 hours, there's a good chance they will too. He exhaled hard, then felt the tears rising. He tried to turn away, to hide it, but the surgeon smiled. "Don't. Not after what you did. Most humans wouldn't have survived what she went through. But that dog didn't just survive a python attack. She protected life while doing it." Daniel whispered, "She's stronger than all of us." They let him see her that morning. The sun had barely risen when he stepped into the ICU room. Sasha lay inside a warm, padded chamber with IVs, oxygen tubes, and sensors all over her. But she was awake, groggy but awake. When Daniel knelt beside the chamber and spoke her name, her eyes turned slowly toward him. "Sasha, you did it," he said, his voice cracking. "You're still here." She blinked once, and that was enough. That blink broke him entirely. Remo stood at the glass door, tail slowly wagging, and Lux sat close behind, watching. For the first time in hours, Daniel allowed himself to feel hope. News of Sasha's survival spread fast. Within 24 hours, every handler on the base knew. Then, so did their families. Then the internet. Someone posted a grainy photo of Sasha being lifted from the python's coils. Daniel, Remo, and the machete visible in the background. It went viral overnight. Pregnant K9 survives python attack thanks to her fellow dogs. Military heroes with 4 legs. The rescue of Sasha. The world wanted to know who she was. People donated to her recovery fund. Letters poured in from children, from veterans, from dog lovers around the world. Daniel wasn't ready for that attention, but Sasha had earned every word. What mattered most to him was watching her begin to heal. Every day he visited, every day, she looked a little stronger. By day 4, she was able to lift her head. By day 5, she ate solid food. And on the 6th day, she did something no one expected. She licked Daniel's hand and tried to stand. "Whoa, there, girl." He laughed softly, kneeling. "Take your time." But Sasha had no intention of waiting. 2 weeks after the incident, she walked on her own. And then her pups were born. 3 tiny German shepherds, all healthy. The weak one had somehow made it. A miracle no vet could explain. Daniel was there for it all. He was the first person they heard, the first human scent they knew. Remo and Lux were allowed to visit, too, kept a polite distance but always wagging, always alert. Lena stood beside him one morning as they watched Sasha nurse the pups. "She's not just a hero," Lena whispered. "She's a symbol now." Daniel nodded slowly. "She taught me something," he said. "Out there in the swamp, when everything was trying to kill her, she didn't give up. Not for herself. For them. For her pups. That's what courage is." Lena placed a photo on the table. It was from the swamp, taken by one of the rangers. Sasha lay on the ground, the python bleeding behind her, and the 4 dogs standing around her like bodyguards. It looked like something out of a movie. Daniel picked up the photo and stared at it. "I don't know if people will ever understand what that moment was really like," he said, "but I'll never forget it." And deep down, he knew Sasha's story was only just beginning. It had been a month since the python attack, and Sasha's story had already taken on a life of its own. National media had picked it up. She was featured on Good Morning America. Her image, cradling her 3 newborn pups in the corner of her veterinary chamber, had been turned into a digital painting that circulated across the internet under the title, "The Mother Who Refused to Die." Daniel couldn't go anywhere without someone recognizing him now. People wanted selfies, handshakes, stories. They thanked him, but he always redirected the credit. He'd say, "I was just a guy who showed up. They saved each other." By they, he meant the dogs. Remo and Lux were now unofficial celebrities, too. AK9 Foundation offered to sponsor their long-term care and future placement, if needed. But Daniel had already made his decision. Once cleared, all 3 dogs, Sasha and her 2 fellow K9s, would come live with him at his cabin outside Gainesville. But that morning, things shifted. Daniel was standing in Sasha's recovery suite at the Naples Center, gently stroking her head as her 3 pups, just over 4 weeks old now, suckled quietly. He had named them Valor, Echo, and Hope. Hope was a runt. She had been the one with the weakest heartbeat. But now, she was the first to open her eyes. He was smiling when Lena rushed in. "Dan," she said breathlessly, "you need to take a call. It's the Department of Defense." He blinked. Why would the DOD? They didn't say, but they asked for you, by name. Daniel followed her out to the front office, where a secure line had been patched through. He picked up the receiver. "This is Specialist Daniel Hayes." "Specialist Hayes," a deep voice replied. "This is Colonel Frank Maddox, Joint Task Force Command. First, let me thank you for your actions in the field. We've all been following the story. Remarkable." Daniel stayed quiet. This didn't feel like a congratulatory call. "There's a reason I'm calling," the colonel continued. 2 days ago, a surveillance drone over southern Honduras picked up strange signals near a collapsed search and rescue base. It was a training outpost jointly used by the U.S. and Honduran forces for K-9 rescue operations. Daniel's heart ticked faster. "I wasn't aware we had anything operational in that area anymore. It was decommissioned officially," the colonel said. "But we had a team using the site off record, disaster prep. There was a landslide. We believe there may be survivors, human and K-9. And you want me?" Daniel asked cautiously. "We want Sasha." "Silence. You want the dog who just survived a python attack and gave birth to 3 pups to return to the field? Only if she's cleared medically, which we hear might be possible within weeks. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate, but she's the only one trained on that specific terrain. She worked that base before. She knows it." Daniel clenched the phone. She almost died. You know that, right? We also know she's one of the best we've ever seen. And she might be the only chance we have of finding the others. Before they run out of time, Daniel didn't give an answer. He ended the call with a tight jaw and a storm behind his eyes. Later that night, he sat alone in Sasha's recovery room, the pups asleep beside her. She was stronger now, still healing, but walking with ease. Her coat was growing back and over the surgical scars. Her gaze was sharp again, like a soldier waiting for the next mission. Daniel ran his hand through his hair. "How can I even ask you this, girl?" he whispered. Sasha tilted her head, as if sensing the weight in his voice. "You've given enough," he said. "You earn peace. You earn family. You don't have to prove anything to anyone ever again." She blinked, then nudged her nose into his palm. The pup stirred. Hope climbed over her brothers and curled beneath Sasha's chin. Daniel's heart broke all over again. But he also knew something else. Sasha had never been ordinary. She wasn't meant for ordinary endings. She was a fighter, and this fight might need her. The next day, Daniel brought the proposal to Lena, who nearly dropped her coffee. "You're considering it?" she asked. "I'm asking what's physically possible," he replied. "If she's not 100%, I shut it down. No compromise." Lena paced the room, fuming. She should be at home, in a yard, playing with her pups and chasing butterflies, not being flown into a disaster zone. "She's not just a pet," Daniel said. "She's trained. She was built for this. She almost died for this." Daniel nodded slowly. "And she lived for it, too." They didn't speak for a long while. Finally, Lena sighed. "I'll run the full diagnostic series. Blood work. Muscle scans. We'll be brutally honest about the results." "That's all I want," Daniel said quietly. 2 days later, the results were in. "She's stable," Lena said, sliding the file across the table. "No internal bleeding, no recurring inflammation. Muscle tone is near full recovery. Cardiovascular performance is back in green. She's cleared with restrictions." "And her mental state?" Lena chuckled. "She's more focused than most of the humans on this base." Daniel exhaled. It wasn't relief. It was resolve. The final decision came down to him, not as her handler, as the one who loved her. That night, Daniel returned to the recovery room again. He stood beside her bed while she lay with her pups. "Sasha," he said gently, "they need you, somewhere far from here." She looked at him. "I'll go with you," he said. "I won't leave your side. But if you say no, if you just want to stay here and raise these babies, I'll respect that." She stood up, not slowly, not painfully, strongly, and then she walked to the door. Remo barked once from down the hall. Lux followed a moment later, tail wagging. The team was ready. 3 days later, the Air Force C-130 lifted from MacDill Air Force Base, cutting across the Florida coast before veering south towards Central America. In the rear cargo bay sat Daniel, Lena, 2 medics, and the K-9 team, Sasha, Remo, and Lux. The pups were left in foster care at the veterinary center under watchful eyes. Sasha hadn't cried. She had kissed each pup once, licked Hope twice, then walked calmly into her crate and waited for the doors to close. As the aircraft soared into the clouds, Daniel sat across from her, staring into the dark of the fuselage. "She chose this," he whispered, and he knew, whatever waited for them in the jungles of Honduras, Sasha would face it head-on, because that's what she did. She was a soldier, a mother, a survivor, and now, once again, a rescuer. The air in Honduras was nothing like Florida. It was heavier, thicker, almost tangible. It clung to skin and fur like wet cloth, wrapping everything in a sticky heat that never broke. The jungle was alive with unfamiliar sounds. Howler monkeys in the distance, insects buzzing like distant engines, birds that shrieked instead of singing. Everything here moved fast. Everything had teeth. As the military convoy crawled to the overgrown path leading to the collapsed K-9 training outpost, Daniel scanned the dense terrain ahead. His hand rested instinctively on the side of Sasha's crate, her brown eyes fixed on the moving green outside. She wasn't nervous. She was alert, present, Focused. Behind them rode Remo and Lux, each in reinforced travel kennels built for airborne deployment. This was no media appearance. This was not recovery. This was real. People were missing. Dogs, too. The base had been overwhelmed by a landslide triggered by record rainfall 10 days ago. Communications were wiped out in an instant. Early reports confirmed that at least 2 Honduran handlers and a civilian vet had been trapped. So had 1 U.S. handler and 3 dogs, names classified. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that someone he knew might be among them. When the convoy arrived at the former base perimeter, Daniel stepped out of the transport first, boots sinking slightly into the wet jungle floor. What had once been a clean, orderly structure was now a twisted landscape of shattered concrete, felled trees, and a thick layer of reddish mud. Steel rebar jutted out like ribs from a corpse. It looked like a war zone. The commanding officer on the ground, a tough, grizzled major named Alvarez, approached immediately. "We've cleared the East section," Alvarez said. "No signs of life. But 2 K9s are confirmed missing. The others could still be alive. The West Quadrant is too unstable for humans. We've lost 2 drones already trying to scan it." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Then we let Sasha try." Alvarez gave him a long, skeptical look. "She's the one from the Python story, right?" Daniel nodded once. "Thought she was half dead." "She was. And now you're putting her back into this?" "No one else can navigate this terrain," Daniel said flatly. "She trained here before. She knows the scent of the earth. And she won't stop until she finds someone." Major Alvarez crossed his arms and gave a tight nod. "If she gets hurt, it's on you." Daniel didn't blink. "It always has been." The search began at sunrise. Sasha wore a lightweight tactical vest embedded with a GPS tracker, heart rate monitor, and temperature sensor. She moved like a phantom, silent, low to the ground, weaving between fallen trees and crushed steel beams like it was her second home. Daniel followed closely behind, never more than 15 feet away, careful not to make noise or disrupt her focus. Remo and Lux waited back at the perimeter with 2 handlers and Lena, ready to deploy if needed. But this first push it had to be Sasha. Within 10 minutes, Sasha paused. Her nose twitched. Daniel slowed to a crouch. "What is it, girl?" She moved left, nose to the ground, tail low, shoulders tense. Then she stopped, facing a collapsed structure that used to be the veterinary wing. Suddenly, she barked once. Short, precise, a signal. She began to dig. Daniel ran forward, checking the GPS overlay on his handheld. Sasha was targeting a zone that had been marked inaccessible just 2 days ago. He dropped to his knees beside her, clawing to the mud and debris with his hands. The smell hit him first. Not death, but sweat, blood. Human, alive. He shouted into his radio. "We've got contact. Sector Bravo, 6. Bring Remo and extraction." Minutes later, Remo arrived, and the 2 dogs alternated shifts, pushing aside debris, nosing through tunnels too small for humans. Then Sasha ducked into a narrow crevice and didn't return immediately. Daniel's breath caught. "Sasha," he called. "You okay, girl?" No response. "Lena." "She's inside something. I'm going after her." "You can't fit." Lena shouted through the comms. But Daniel was already lying flat, pushing himself into the tight opening Sasha had found. The air turned humid and dark. He could hear her breathing. Then he saw her. She was crouched next to something. Someone. It was a man, unconscious, pale, his military fatigue soaked in sweat and blood. Daniel recognized him instantly. Eric Morales. AK-9 handler Daniel had served within Colorado 2 years ago. They had trained side by side. He pressed 2 fingers to Eric's neck. Weak, but alive. Sasha looked up at Daniel. She was panting hard, but her tail wagged faintly. She had found him. "Good girl," Daniel whispered, choking on emotion. "You did it." The extraction was brutal. They had to dig for over 2 hours to clear a tunnel large enough to pull Eric through without causing further injury. Sasha stayed by his side the entire time, refusing to leave the chamber until Daniel carried her out himself. When they finally emerged, covered in mud and sweat, A cheer went up from the base perimeter. Eric was alive, and so was Sasha. Daniel didn't speak as medics rushed in to treat his friend. He sat beside Sasha, hand buried in her damp fur. "You're not just back," he whispered. "You're stronger than ever." But the day wasn't over. As night began to fall, a second bark echoed from the east perimeter. It was Lux. Daniel ran. He found Lena crouched beside Lux, her face pale. "There's something else out there," she said. "She's reacting like Sasha did." Then they heard it, a faint yip, barely audible, from beneath a large pile of collapsed rebar. Daniel's heart sank. "That's a dog." Lux leapt into action. Within minutes, the second discovery became clear. A trapped K9, injured but alive, buried beneath wreckage, ribs visible through torn skin. She was trembling, eyes wide with terror. Remo joined the effort. The three dogs, Sasha, Lux, and Remo, worked side by side, silent, focused, unstoppable. By midnight, the second rescue was complete, 2 lives saved, and all thanks to the K9S. Back at the mobile base that night, Daniel stood outside the triage tent where Eric slept, stabilized. The rescued dog was also recovering. Her name, they discovered, was Bella, a Honduran tracker dog who had worked search and rescue ops for nearly 5 years. Sasha lay beside her pups again, who had been flown in for reunion. Once stability was confirmed, Hope was now walking. Echo was chewing everything. Valor had started barking for attention like clockwork. Sasha was calm, proud. "Oh," Daniel looked at her, surrounded by the lives she had saved and the ones she had brought into the world. He didn't need cameras. He didn't need headlines. He only needed this moment. A dog, a soldier, a mother, a legend, and somehow still just getting started. 3 months later, the sun rose over the green hills of northern Florida, painting the sky in golden streaks. A light breeze stirred the pine trees surrounding Daniel's remote cabin. Quiet, serene, nothing like the chaos of the jungle or the nightmare in the swamp. This was peace. And for the first time in a long time, they all had earned it. Sasha lay on the wooden porch, her pups Valor, Echo, and Hope tumbling around her paws. Their legs were longer now, stronger, their eyes curious and filled with mischief. Hope chased a leaf in circles while Echo gnawed on a boot he'd stolen from the laundry basket. Valor sat like a sentinel at the edge of the steps, as if guarding the world. Daniel watched them with a smile. He sipped coffee from a weathered mug, scars on his hands catching the light. He'd seen a lifetime in 6 months. From a python's crushing coils in the Everglades to the landslides of Honduras. He had nearly lost Sasha, twice, but she was still here. Not only that, she was thriving. Her coat had grown back fully, glossy and rich. The surgical scars were hidden beneath thick fur, but Daniel never forgot where they were. He still touched them sometimes, as if to remind himself that they hadn't imagined any of it. Remo lay nearby, older, calmer, never far from Sasha's side. Lux chased the pups for a few minutes before collapsing dramatically into the shade, tail thumping. The small ranch had become something sacred, a refuge for dogs who had seen too much, done too much, and given more than most would ever understand. Daniel turned on the old radio, letting the morning news filter into the air. And in this morning's special segment, we're highlighting the incredible story of Sasha, the military K9 German Shepherd who survived a python attack, gave birth to 3 puppies, and weeks later led a successful rescue of 2 trapped victims in a Honduran jungle landslide. Now retired and living with her former handler, Specialist Daniel Hayes, Sasha has become a symbol of resilience and sacrifice. Today, she's being officially inducted into the National Working Dog Hall of Honor. Daniel laughed quietly. Sasha didn't care about medals, or plaques, or morning radio tributes. She cared about the pups under her paws, the trees around her, the earth beneath her feet. But still, he looked over at her and raised his mug. "You earned it, girl," he said. That afternoon, a car pulled up the dirt road, leading to the cabin. Daniel stood up as it came to a stop and watched as Lena stepped out, holding a manila folder in one hand. He hadn't seen her since the final evacuation in Honduras. She smiled wide and threw her arms around him without a word. "You look human," she said playfully. "You look like you're still giving orders to everyone," he shot back. She knelt and greeted Sasha with a soft rub behind the ears, then sat on the porch beside Daniel. "I came to deliver this," she said, handing him the folder. He opened it. Inside were 4 printed certificates, official adoptions, Remo, Lux, Sasha, and a temporary foster-to-adopt status for each pup, listing him as the primary caretaker. "They're all yours now," Lena said softly. "The military has approved full retirement and placement under your care." Daniel nodded slowly. "It was always a plan." He paused. "And the others?" "Eric's recovering well," she replied. "Bella, too. She's back with her Honduran handler's family. We're setting up a support unit for aging K9S, based on what happened." They sat in silence for a while, watching the dogs play. Then Daniel turned toward her. "You ever think maybe it wasn't just about saving lives?" "What do you mean?" He gestured toward the dogs. "Maybe Sasha went back into that jungle to prove something. Not just that she could still do it, but that she was still meant to. That her purpose wasn't over, even after she nearly died. She came back from the edge and gave more." Lena smiled. "Sometimes I think these dogs are better than us." Daniel chuckled. "No doubt." As the sun began to set, casting warm amber light across the property, Sasha stood slowly. She walked to the edge of the porch and looked out across the open field, her tail lifting with pride. Hope trotted beside her, the smallest of the 3 pups, trying to match her mother's stride. Daniel felt a lump in his throat as he watched them, the mother who had survived, the pup who had almost never been born, side by side, strong, unbreakable. Later that night, after Lena had gone and the pups were asleep in a pile on the porch, Daniel knelt beside Sasha and scratched behind her ears. "I'm proud of you," he whispered, "and I'm honored I got to walk beside you." She turned her head and licked his cheek, slow and gentle. He sat beside her in silence as stars began to pepper the sky, and the wind rustled the trees around them. No sirens, no helicopters, no emergencies, just the peace they had all bled for. Because Sasha's story wasn't just one of survival. It was about rising again and again, no matter the odds. About choosing purpose, even when life offers you rest. About giving more, even when you've already given everything. She was a mother, a warrior, a legend, and as long as Daniel drew breath, the world would never forget her. If this story moved you, help us spread it, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes in courage, resilience, and the powerful bond between humans and the animals who walk beside us. Sometimes, the ones who save us have 4 legs and a heart made of steel.